Hey, happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to Pathfinder 0022. We are joined today by Andy Lapsa, who is the CEO and co-founder of Stoke Space. We are going to talk a lot about rockets today. We're going to talk a lot about Stoke and their interesting ideas for full reusability and sustainability, and a whole lot more. But first, I want to tell you about the sponsored today's episode, Space Ventures. Space Ventures is the planet's first space investment portal, and they recently launched an effort to open an investment round into SpaceX. They've received over 17.1 million in pledges from more than 1,000 investors, and 80 million in private party interest is looking to add to the petition. With that kind of traction, Space Ventures is well on its way to becoming the first investment portal to conduct a SpaceX allocation. If you're interested in investing in SpaceX, you can be a part of history by heading over to spaceventures.com. That's spaced with an ED, and pledge to invest in SpaceX, no commitment required. Check out their website, Space Ventures, for more information, not financial advice, do your own diligence, et cetera, et cetera. All right, without further ado, Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for having me.
Where are you calling in from today?
Just outside Seattle.
All right, how's the weather?
Amazingly, really nice. It's been,
Awesome.
summers
Awesome.
in Pacific Northwest are incredible, and it's just extended into October still. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, last time we spoke, I got to see the factory, and that's why I think we talked about that briefly. I was like stunned by how sunny and just beautiful it was. And that was back when Texas was still like 150 degrees, but why don't we start? Of course, we'll mainly focus on Stoke, but why don't you give a quick rundown of your resume from going back to education?
All right. Went to undergrad at Cornell, did mechanical aerospace. In that process, I got real excited. I really liked fluid mechanics, combustion. Went to grad school to do that. Did kind of had a lot of physical chemistry, and in any case, it was an experimental PhD at Michigan, which was really great. It's juggled a lot of projects, design, build, test, go quick, put some science behind it, that type of thing.
Go quick. That's going to be a recurring theme today.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and it was maybe a blessing in disguise, but my funding situation, I had to work really hard for it. And that's why I had a handful of parallel projects going on, and all of them experimental and design, build, test. So that was really cool. And then in 2009, I graduated, and in that education process, I had an internship in California, in Southern California. And I liked the internship. I hated Southern California. And,
Wow. Kind of a hot take.
Maybe it's because of the specific location I was at, but either way, that was planted in my head. And so anyway, this time, Blue Origin and SpaceX were both kind of emerging, and I didn't like Southern California, but I did love my visit to the Pacific Northwest, and so I went to Blue. And it was also a lot smaller, which appealed to me, right? So I think all the way up till like 2015, Blue Origin was about 10 times less by head count. And then they really started to ramp up hiring. And by now they're probably about close. But
the week that the week that I was referring to when I was in Seattle for the new space, we both spoke at that conference, but Blue Origin said, and I don't think it was actually widely reported or noticed, but I think they said they were at 8,000. So that's the benchmark.
Huge number.
Put on.
And I don't know where SpaceX is at either, but I think it's somewhere 10, 11, right? So
yeah, that's what I would guess too. I think it's helpful actually to level set with like head count and how that changed over your time there. What about the projects or major development programs?
So I came in, as a new grad in 2009, did a couple different R&D programs, and then in 2011. That's when the B4 idea started to germinate, I guess. So at that time frame, it was completely blank page, but really what Jeff was doing is saying, hey, it's time to go bigger. We got to start thinking about this. And I was one of the very early 3 people who started answering those questions. And like I said, it was a totally blank page. So it was a really, really cool opportunity to think from a perspective of, let the physics direct the answer and go from there. So I was taking imagination and turning it into something that was executable. And it was a really, really, really small team at that point. So a lot of fun. That led to system definition of BE4 and held a number of different roles through that. Was the development test lead all the way up until we fired the engine for the first time. And then following that, I ran B3 and B3U, both programs. And then, I got really excited about commercial space and what was going on, and wanted to play maybe a different role in my contributions there. So I started to look around, and it wasn't intuitive at first, but ultimately that led to starting this company.
Awesome. So I think that's helpful because you established your commercial space cred, so to speak, and credentials and chops. I also think it's kind of an interesting thread that you didn't, when you were leaving Blue, you didn't necessarily have your mind set on starting a company, being a space founder. Is that right? Because I was talking to Laura Crabtree recently for I guess when this airs, it will have been a few, I don't know, time travel. I don't want to do that. It's Friday. You looked around. So what did that look like? What did the landscape look like, and what were you looking for?
Okay, so first of all, I had been out at Blue at this point for a little over 10 years. So this was like a big step for me. I was I guess emotionally not attached, but I was emotionally invested. That's the right term I was looking for. I was emotionally invested in everything I was doing at Blue. So it was a really big step for me to, step back and look for what's next. And I took that time, for me to say, hey, do I want to keep doing rocketry? Do I want to keep doing aerospace? There are other things I'm passionate about, like energy production, distributed energy production, things like that. And so I took the opportunity to really look around. I looked at a couple of fusion companies. I looked at,
Interesting.
Different ideas from a science perspective. I looked at, obviously what else was going on in space. And my conclusion out of all that was, I have unfinished business in this industry. If I go do something else now, I'm probably not going to come back to it. That would be a regret. All right, I'm going to commit myself to solving this problem.
It would nag you for the rest of your life, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So from there, I was like, well, look, launch is not solved yet, right? We've made progress industry-wide. I mean, we've made progress in the last 10, 15 years, but it is far, far, far from a solved problem. And so I was like, okay, if that's true, who's out there doing what I need? And so your question was, what was I looking for? And what I found myself looking for were really three things. I was looking for the right thesis. I was looking for the right team, and I was looking for a track record of habitual execution. Say what you're going to go do and then go do it. And it was really hard to find any one of those three, to be honest with you. And certainly not the combination. And so even though there were, I don't know how many, on paper, how many rocket companies are, but there's like 150 or something. And I just kind of went systematically through the list, and I was like, no, the winner's not out there yet. And or at least a handful of winners are not out there yet. So like I said, it was not intuitive to start my own company, but had to be done.
Yeah, right. I like the framework, the 3 T's of thesis, track record, and team. And you almost sound like a VC, like what you're looking for in a founder, but obviously you're on the other side of the table. Okay. So we high level talked a little bit about the vision. We will go a lot deeper on the vision and unpacking that, but what were the next steps? Tell us a little bit about your co-founder and then the early team.
So Tom and I found ourselves kind of going on this, let's say, exploration in parallel. We had worked very closely together on B4. In fact, I was, coming out of system design on B4. I then owned the thrust chamber. So I was a thrust chamber designer, team of one. And then as we got hardware in, I moved on to the test development role, and handed it off to Tom. So Tom and I worked really closely, way back then and through BE4. But then when I went over to the BE3s, we, diverged a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But we found ourselves, kind of going on this exploration, in parallel, and both kind of coming to the same conclusion. Like we couldn't find the place that we wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then we get to talking, and we said, okay, well, hell yeah, let's do it. And what we did was basically say, all right, we've got this thesis. We have confidence in ourselves. We have confidence we can put a good team together. We have no idea how the hell we're going to do this. What we did
to start a launch company, you got to have confidence. The credentials we've already established, and you got to have like a little bit of crazy.
Yeah,
right?
And I totally agree with what you said. Although I feel like I'm a conservative person from that perspective.
That's fair.
So
that's fair
I
enough.
did a lot of like personal homework on. I got a family to support and all this stuff. Right? It's very.
I think it's clear, but just to be crystal clear, it's not like you were like overnight. Oh, I'm gonna go start a rocket company. Like
it's definitely not on a whim.
yeah, exactly.
But what was maybe the leap of faith that Eric Berger just commented or quoted the leap of faith thing. What was a leap of faith was on the technical side, and the way we handled that was we said, okay, we're going to give ourselves 6 months. We know we're not going to make salary during that time. There's no money. We're going to give ourselves 6 months to figure it out. Right? What is this? If 100% rapid reuse is the inevitable end state, how is that going to work technically? So we left Blue, and that was our goal. We gave ourselves that time period to figure it out. We were cranking away out of his basement for a while, and trying to come up with an architecture. And what we found ourselves looking for technically was we wanted to create a solution that we thought was bulletproof and robust, but was not a science problem. We wanted to create an engineering challenge, not a science problem. And I think we did that. And that's what got us all excited to keep going. And, we put in for a couple grants and SBIRs, and gave us conviction to go and raise somebody else's money. And, that's a responsibility we take pretty seriously.
Right.
But then we're off and running.
So we will return to this point, but I just want to put a bookmark, I suppose. But you mentioned, the science versus engineering. No part of the stack, so to speak, is like fundamentally unsolved. Is that the right read on what you're saying?
Yeah. I would say the technical building blocks are not only something that we've done before in the industry, but that our team specifically has done, if not once, multiple times, right? So all the building blocks are, let's say vanilla.
Yeah.
But the system architecture is the thing that's, I think, maybe innovative.
Yeah. You've gone through Y Combinator, so probably, all the startup lingo, the classic startup lingo. Would you say that Stoke is like a first principles company, like you're building from first principles? As a toss-up question, or sorry, a softball, but I want to. There's
I think that's the way. That's the way you have to think. I think if yes, you have to think that way. There are times where, if the payoff is not high, then you just do what's already been done because you can avoid pitfalls and you just go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in design, you're not going to improve things unless you think from first principles. And I think the other thing that's really important about this comment is that even if let's say you're inheriting a design that already works, if you're not thinking from first principles and you're not actually understanding what's going on in there, and when something does go wrong or when you have to improve it, you're at a position where, you may do more harm than good or
Right.
whatever, right? So you always have to think from first principles.
Yeah. Quick aside, I guess this would be like a zeroth principle. Did you entertain the idea of like a different form factor, as in not a rocket, or you're pretty convinced a rocket so are the right way to get to space?
I guess not seriously.
Like,
but what I would say
there's
is
like,
that I've done in school and education and for fun a lot of reading and understanding. And what I would say is that it's really hard to get to space from Earth, right?
of course,
We're in this gravity well, and it's like sized just right so that we can get to space, but barely, right? And what that translates to is that rockets are, they're very, very highly coupled systems with necessarily relatively low margins. And if they're not those things, then you can't get to space out of our gravity well, right? And so, if you're thinking about space planes or SSTO or whatever it is, those are really, really difficult propositions to make. Just because it's hard to get to space.
yeah,
And that's especially true if you need to save something in your system to get back down and turn around again quickly.
yeah. While we're on the topic, how would you categorize, like qualify what percentage of reusable let's start with the space shuttle, because we were just on space planes, and then I also want to ask about Falcon 9, given its flight rate and the amount that these boosters are starting to fly and how quickly they're being turned around. Is it an unfair question to ask, like, what percent reusable is this rocket, or is it fair? Because Stoke, well, you guys say,
here's what I would say.
You say 100% reusable, so I would guess that you are okay with the proposition of using like a percentage to describe the range of reusable.
I'm totally okay with that. And I don't know the answer to shuttle for Falcon for that matter. But what I would say is that the better question to ask is, how available is this vehicle and how much does it cost?
Yeah.
Those are the questions. Those are the questions that matter.
That's true. I mean,
start there, right?
You could use the space shuttle, and it was very expensive.
Space shuttle is a great example, right? It's super expensive. Took 30,000 person hours between flights just to turn around the thermal protection system, right? So like maybe it's reusable, but does it count?
Yeah. Well, and then I mean, on your point of cost, I think it's Laurie Garber's estimate, but over the course of the programming, basically netted out to like $1 billion a head to take astronauts to and from the International Space Station.
That's incredible.
It's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't like, there weren't like, I mean, it's a lot. So your rocket, which we don't have a name for it yet, so I'll just say the rocket, but it's not going to cost $1 billion to build, I would imagine.
Well, if it does, we should shut our doors now. No, I think, and obviously Falcon 9 doesn't cost anywhere near that either. But what I think is that, I think as reuse goes up and as turnaround time goes down, there's still at least a zero that can come off of the cost of launch. And just as importantly, the availability is going up, right? You saw some of the mega constellations. First of all, Falcon 9 is not quite exclusively, but close. The overwhelming majority of that manifest is Starlink. So that's a first party customer. And then you saw Kuiper buy up the heavy lift that's otherwise out there in the industry. There's a couple other larger constellations that have to get up. And so availability becomes equally as important as cost in a lot of cases, not all cases, but a lot of cases. So that's really important. And you've got to figure out a way to provide that availability without driving up cost. And if you are not reusable, even if your first stage is reusable, but not your second stage, the only way you can improve reusability or availability is by scaling your manufacturing, right? So you're in this like production rate limited paradigm where, for our systems or space systems in general, you got to scale up production, but you also have to scale up acceptance testing. There's an engine on every second stage, right? So you got to scale up your test stand throughput. All these things are pretty high touch and costly, right?
Yeah. Well,
So that's all cost driver.
Is the rocket the product, or is the factory and to your point, all the infrastructure the product?
Well, Elon's famously says the factory is a product. I think there's a lot of value in that sentiment, and it's a great mindset to come from. But to me, the product is the service, right? The service that delivers your thing wherever you want to go, whenever you want to go, at a really low price, right?
Yeah.
And draw a contrast to the way we ship goods and services around the world, really in any other avenue, right? You can get ground shipping, which is kind of like or bulk shipping. It's kind of like the rideshare model, right? Where you can survive taking a month maybe to import or export from overseas or whatever. And then you've got express shipping, et cetera, right? But you can move whatever you want, including yourself, just about anywhere on the planet, whenever you want to go, at like pretty shockingly low prices.
Yeah.
And then if you look at space and you want to put something up, let's look at transporter missions, right? You get 2 or 3 transporter missions per year to pick from. They're going to exactly 2 locations on orbit. If you want to go somewhere from there, you're looking at 6-ish month, phase change or orbit raise or whatever. Just like
last mile delivery,
not even remotely similar to the way we move goods and services anywhere else, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where we got to get.
Yeah. The gravitational well is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, the high seas are a force to be reckoned with too, but clearly God,
the high seas are well. So look at shipping 200 years ago. And by the way, 200 years ago is not a long time ago.
That's true.
Like a handful of generations, but back then you're moving things around with wooden tall ships, or maybe by 200 years ago, they're not wooden hull anymore, but you know what I mean, right? Like they're tall ships sailing around, takes months. It's slow. It's expensive. It's unreliable. You would never dream of outsourcing manufacturing overseas in that world, right? So I think space, we're basically in that world for space.
Right. Well, I'm really proud now because on Pathfinder, we've now had comparisons to covered wagons and wooden ships on the seas. So we're really covering the range. And to your point about that not being that long ago, Queen Elizabeth lived through the entirety of us going of space, of humans going to space, which I think that I just thought that was a pretty powerful example. But let's get
there's a generation, or at least 10, 20 years ago, there's a generation of people who moved around with horse and carriage.
That's true.
And in that lifestyle, think about what that
is wild.
Generation got to see. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's wild to think about. But it's high time for us to get into the good stuff. We danced around it, but I want to focus on it.
All right.
What is Stoke doing differently with the rocket? I mean, we've talked about rapid reusability. You talked about like low cost, wherever, whenever. Just tee you up and have at it.
All right. So it's also kind of part of the founding story. You want low cost, on demand access, direct to final orbit or rideshare, doesn't matter. But you want to go wherever you want to go, whenever you want to go, at a low price. How do you do that? And our logic is that you have to get out of this production rate limited paradigm, and that means you have to reuse 100% of the vehicle. Okay, great, sounds great. Not a new idea. So how do you do that? And what we said, or what we found ourselves thinking about, was, first of all, obviously the second stage is the last domino to fall in this equation, right? That's the thing that in general our industry has not figured out yet. And hopefully that domino is on its way down. But
second stage first at Stoke.
That's the unsolved problem. That's the problem that has to get solved, right? So what we thought about. And when you think about it, you have to think about, okay, it's not enough. We already learned from shuttle. It's not enough to reuse it. It has to be able to turn around quick. And if you think about a 1-day turnaround or less, you have to think very hard about not only what you have to do in those 24 hours, but what you're not allowed to do. You are not allowed to go in and, deploy an army to inspect thermal protection systems. You certainly can't have them refurbishing between flights. All of your energy has to be thinking about how do you get the next payload on and fuel up the vehicle and go, right? That's what you have to focus on. And that means you need a system that's reliable enough that you can trust it one flight after the next. 80th flight, 81st flight, 82nd flight, you trust it, right? It's a battleship. And so that's kind of our mentality or where we started. And in that world, we start looking at, how do you protect this vehicle coming in? And we just couldn't get ourselves comfortable with ceramic tile solutions that are brittle and subject to whatever, bird strikes, ice strikes, and even things as mundane as, like mechanics dropping a wrench. If you're working on brittle shuttle tiles or whatever, and you drop a wrench, now what do? You're like, oh, that's fine. Is it? Like all kinds of questions, right? So simple things like that all of a sudden become potential issues. So anyway, we didn't like the tile solution, and we come from both engine land, and we come from this world where we cool rocket engines have 10 times higher heat flux or worse thermal environment than reentry. And we cool them all the time. And not only do we cool them all the time, we cool them in a way where if you develop a crack or a flaw on the inside of that engine liner, it's a passive failure mode. It's a self-arresting failure mode. And
so there's redundancy built into it.
Not necessarily redundancy, but it's a failure where, let's say if you have a crack in a ceramic tile, then that would be called a catastrophic failure mode because you get the searing plasma coming through and then that slices everything else and it runs away from there, right? But in this case, if you get a failure mode, you just keep humming, maybe at a slightly smaller, lower efficiency, but you keep humming, right? So you're tolerant to things like cracks. And that's really what you need in a long life, low touch vehicle. So we couldn't get that out of our head. And we said, all right, well, what if you can extend that kind of logic to this reentry problem? What does that look like? And it's hard, right? Cause it adds mass and all these things, but, how do you design a system so that that's okay? That became the crux of the problem.
So what is most novel about the design of this? Is it the thermal protection? Is it the propulsion and how that is sort of designed? I mean, it's really difficult because the majority, actually, I would wager that potentially more people will watch this than listen. We'll see, but it's hard to walk through. But I'll share whatever visuals you'll have. But you've been tweeting pictures of testing. And the design, I'm not going to do the design justice by talking and gesticulating wildly here, but what's most novel, about the approach in your estimation?
I think the most novel part is, is our approach to thermal protection system. I think, there have been things that are similar that have been proposed over the decades. I haven't seen anything go to, this level of R&D yet that I'm aware of. And so everything else falls from that, right? So that's where we started. Like that exact mentality is exactly where this all came from. And from there it became designing a system. And that was not obvious how to solve that problem either, by the way. So we went through, if we went through our scratchbooks, there's all kinds of different things that are, thought about and analyzed. And we actually thought we had a great approach that then we went, in higher fidelity simulations during reentry and realized, oh, that's not actually as good as we thought it was going to be. So it was a road to get to the final solution that we have, which, as you described, right? So we've got, kind of a classic shaped heat shield, capsule style reentry heat shield. Then around the perimeter of that, there's an array of thrusters that provide our propulsion.
Innovation requires early stage funding, but space startups don't have many options. Space Ventures is our world's first space investment portal, offering direct access to investment deals and letting you back innovative space startups. Space Ventures has launched an effort to open an investment round into SpaceX. Over 1,000 investors have pledged to invest $17.1 million so far. The more investors pledge, the stronger the chances for SpaceX to conduct a community round on Space Ventures. You could be among the first retail investors to have the opportunity to invest in SpaceX by heading to their website and pledging to invest. No commitment required. Check out their website, spaceventures.com, for more information. How many thrusters? Is that public?
I think Eric put it in his piece. Yeah. So we have 30 thrusters around the perimeter.
Okay. Are there cautionary tales you would point to? The trials and tribulations of using ceramic tiles? I'm sure you have thoughts on ceramic tiles.
I think the shuttles are lesson, right?
Yeah.
And I think, look, I know SpaceX has done a lot of material science on their tiles. And yeah, I'm not privy on all of their characteristics, but I would be shocked if they accept anything that's as fragile as what was used on the shuttle.
Yeah.
But when we were starting, that to me, that's a science project that I don't know how to solve. And like I said before, we wanted to make an executable engineering program that's bulletproof. And I would also say that even if the tiles are tougher and not as brittle, et cetera, they still have 20,000 tiles that all have to be perfectly attached. And if one pops off, then it's probably looking like game over. I've kind of summarized my standpoint on the tiles.
In my head, I want to return to the topic of solving or not needing to solve any new sort of scientific problems. In my head, like I'm starting to think of a diagram. Here I go again, trying to visually represent things in a audio format, but it's like there's fundamentally a proven technology, low cost approach, and I don't remember the third one, but it's like you can only pick two of three. Like I'm just
cost, schedule, and budget.
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna make it, and I'll put it in the podcast. I'll put it over me using me swinging my hands around, but I think it is an interesting question of what degree you need to buy, like the question of buy versus build, and how much of this you have to do from the ground up. We talked about like the 6 months of clean sheet, and it's very clear from the outside looking in that y'all are moving very quickly. And I also did actually go inside and look and see that. But to what degree is I suppose your speed being enabled by buzzword Pathfinder's biggest buzzword, vertical integration?
Well, everything about speed is well, that's not true. It's hugely enabled by vertical integration. I think, well, first of all, as an industry, let me go back. As an industry, go back to what I said before. A rocket is a tightly coupled system, and it has to be a tightly coupled system because chemical propulsion is, can just barely get us out of the gravity well. So, so rockets are a tightly coupled system. And that means that, it's hard to outsource big pieces of these things because, there's not like a catalog you can flip through and pick out, just what you want, right? We're still, as an industry, we're still trying to figure out what 100% reusable rockets look like. And that's the beauty of this era. It's like the 1940s in aircraft, right? There's all kinds of stuff getting tried. I love it. But that means that we don't know the answer out of the gate. And what that means is you've got to iterate, right? You've got to be able to design, build, test, and iterate. And if you're not vertically integrated, if you can't control your dependencies through that iteration process, then every iteration is going to take a long time. And so the way we've set up our company is really with that philosophy in mind, like top to bottom. We know we have to vertically integrate. So we're going to invest in a machine shop. We're going to pick our design solutions so that they are easy to manufacture, so that there's a talent base, readily available talent base that can, come in and do high quality work on the solutions that we've come up with. We are going to place our engine test stands in a place where we can drive to them in the same day and then back, right? We can shuttle parts back and forth and go through a test on the stand, have an outcome, run a design iteration, make it in the shop, and then have it back on the stand the very next day, right? That's important. That's how we set up our company. If you're not set up that way, then that process that I just described was, if you have to go outside to get that shop, or if you have to, fly your parts across time zones or whatever, right? Like you're looking at least probably 3-4 days. You have to go outside to a shop, like, add some weeks to it for every single iteration.
Yeah. And I think that's made very clear by the past few years of COVID, supply chain shocks, and this year, of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's talk about Moses Lake, but first, let's talk about Kent. You're based in Kent, right? And you are expanding soon. We'll then go to Moses Lake, because I know that there's a lot of exciting stuff happening out there.
Yeah, so we're in a 21,000 square foot facility right now, and we've outgrown it already. So we make use of things like offsite storage and whatnot. But we are expanding soon. We'll have more information coming out about that soon, exactly how and where. But very excited about the team and the technologies that we're putting together in order to move quickly, like we said.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then
we're very close. It's not 100% true, but we're very close to being able to build every single part on a rocket. It doesn't mean we'll build every single serial number forever, but we have the ability to make every single thing.
So you have, all your machining and all of that, and I guess test, all the test infrastructure.
That's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then Moses Lake, which is you alluded to, it's a 2-3 hour drive, and you are very active in Moses Lake, are you not?
Yeah, we're. That's where we're doing our engine development testing. We've got at this point, I think the picture is on Eric's article also, and different things that we've sent out. So we've built from scratch. We've built liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen test stand, rocket engine test stand out there. We also have test cells for different components that go into that, for first stage, second stage components, and then they all come together in the engine test stand.
Gotcha. I mean, we've definitely gone through various parts of the rocket. What else, if anything, would you point to in terms of? I mean, actually, I think it'd be good to focus too on the sustainability aspect of what you're developing.
Let me first go back to the test stand just real quick.
Okay.
I think it's worth noting, right? So we this is pretty cool. So we closed our seed round, and then at that point we were like 5 people in a closet, right? And we said, okay, we got to test, and we signed a lease in about a year with like 1.5, 2 people. Started to put this thing together, and from that point of closing the seed round to 20 months later, we had a full engine test on the stand, right? And it's like we said,
seed stage,
vertical integration.
Yeah. For a
closing
seed
the
stage
seed
startup
funding.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, closing seed funding, right?
Thank you for going back to highlight that, because yes, that's wild.
It's been a marathon, but I think, what I want to emphasize is it speaks to the team that we're putting together more than anything. Just an incredible group that is just a ton of fun to come to work with. And we're moving fast.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess because you mentioned the seed, let's Well, let's just a dealer's choice. But I do want to mention, you obviously you raised an A of $65 million. That was last year. Actually, watch this. I'm going to tie them together. It was led by Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is the Bill Gates founded sustainability focused VC firm. I would imagine that the sustainable aspect was big in getting them on the cap table. I do think I recall, obviously it's not like this deal had, Bill Gates, but Bill Gates has said that he wouldn't invest in a rocket startup, and I mean by association, Breakthrough. So tell us a little bit more about that, and I suppose to what extent the sustainability, the inherent sustainability, and the design of what you're building is key.
Here's the way I would answer that. The way I think about it is that we are in a very pivotal moment as a civilization, and it can go one of a handful of ways. The most interesting way it can go, I think, is that we engineer a way out of, or we engineer a way for us to continue scaling our civilization, where quality of life can continue to go up.
You're not a degrowther.
To do amazing thing. We're not a degrowther, right?
Yeah.
And if we're going to do that, space is going to be an absolutely essential pillar in being able to scale the civilization. In the very near term, what it means is space is already a very important, or space-based assets are a very important mechanism for us to understand the world around us. But there's so much more that we need to understand. We need to learn it fast, right? Because environment is kind of a polarizing topic in ways. But I hope what we can all agree is that nobody understands everything, right? Nobody knows exactly where this thing is going. Nobody exactly knows what the sources are or how to stop them and reverse them. And so there's a lot of learning that we need to do. How are we going to learn that? Space is the right place to do that learning. It is uniquely global in its purview. If we're doing any ground measurements, it's a point measurement. It's very hard to extract global trends from that.
It's not scalable.
It's not
scalable
scalable
from
right?
space, right?
Right. So you need to go to space, and that means that look at what you want is your average. Let's say your average PhD student should be able to do a meaningful thesis, test, and then evaluation, and maybe do it 2 or 3 iteration cycles within their, let's call it 5-year dissertation cycle, right? You can't do that in space right now. It's just way, way, way too expensive. It takes too long to get on orbit. And you can't do it, right? So that's where I think we need to make it easy and accessible. That's low hanging fruit. That's right in front of us. You can do really powerful things let's say forest fires are, they contribute 20% of the world's carbon emissions every year or more. And so if you have a global solution to carbon emissions, you don't have a full answer until you address forest fires. So let's do early detection so you can do early rapid response. Let's track, things like plastics in the ocean. Let's track, track and police bad actors. Let's detect where, methane leakages are happening across, all of this stuff, right? So that's part one. And to me, that's pretty low hanging fruit. The next one is, how do we feed ourselves, especially if we want more of us, right? We want to continue scaling. And so you have to look at agricultural efficiencies. And again, space is a very uniquely suited place to be able to do that. And for example, in fact, I think on one of the recent launches, there's an NASA experiment that's going to go up and try to calculate the total amount of fresh water on Earth, right? That's a number that nobody knows. How much is there? And we might get a great answer back, and we might get a equally bad answer back, right? But what you can do from space is track and predict where global droughts will be. So you can predict, kind of the freshwater supplies around the world, and you can predict with some foresight where you're going to have major areas of drought. You can track and monitor agricultural health, crop health, by multispectral imaging. And so when you have disease that's spreading from one farm to the next, especially across towns and counties and international borders, you can now communicate that readily rather than it being a weird local occurrence, right? So things like that, right? We can get much, much more efficient with the way we utilize the land that we've cultivated. List goes on.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that we are seeing like a lot of progress on all those fronts and in EO. We know that as well as anyone at Payload because we're like writing about it week in and week out. Would you say that launch is like still a gating factor or bottleneck, even though of course there's the proverbial drop in launch cost, that it's still like a gating factor and unleashing like that layer of intelligence?
I think it's the answer is yes. And the reason the answer is yes is because cost and availability cost is high and availability is low, right? If you as a grad student cannot do, 2 to 3 or 1 iteration cycles on something that you want to invent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it's gating to our ability as a civilization to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. So I think that's pretty fascinating. What does?
And then let me go one step further. So to me, that's like near future, low hanging fruit. We all have to do that with urgency. But if you take one step further and say, what does a scaled civilization look like? And you aren't incorporating space, then there's only a limit to how far you can go.
Right.
And so I think you will see in the next step, you're starting to see different manufacturing ideas go to space. You're starting to see communications go more and more to space, and that's good. You're starting to see, I think over time, especially as EO starts to get even more and more powerful, the downlink becomes a bottleneck, and you're going to have to do more data processing and analytics on on orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're gonna have data centers begin to move into space, and it's not necessarily a bad place for them, right? You have 24-hour sunlight in certain orbits, and can move communications around the world globally through space. So I think you're gonna start to see energy production move into space for a more and more meaningful fraction of our total, human energy production need. You're going to see communications go to space. Obviously, we already have. You're going to see manufacturing moving into space.
I was going to ask you, like, do you buy like Jeff Bezos? For anyone who doesn't know which Jeff I'm referring to, like moving heavy industry and manufacturing. Is that what you're referring to with that? I mean, this is. I don't know if this is near term future.
There's still a gravity well we have to get out of, and that has some complexity to it.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense for certain applications, certain things that are high value and in high demand, right? I think it's you're not gonna manufacture sheetrock in space.
Yeah. The damn tyranny of the gravity.
What I'm trying to allude to, though, is an increasing fraction of human activity will go to space, and from there it will scale, and that's really, really compelling and interesting to me. And you're starting to see, transportation, communication, manufacturing, and energy production all go to space, and that's really cool. Those are the 4 main drivers of economic growth. They're all moving to space.
Yes. This is great. I didn't know if we were going to.
All right. So let me turn it back around on the breakthrough. Yeah. Let me turn it back around on the breakthrough energy thing. Okay. So if you agree that that's true, and you believe that the space economy is going to be big, then we had better build that economy in a way that's sustainable and scalable. And disposable rockets are not that thing. Right. And everything matters, right? The propellants that you select matter when you start to think at scale. The level of reusability matters when you start to think of scale. And so I think from all of those reasons, it made sense for Breakthrough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's really easy for anyone to understand why a fully reusable rocket, in terms of, not expending anything in orbit or in an ocean and just coming back and going back up, why that's sustainable. What's like the sustainability benefit or like emissions profile of the fuel you use? I don't think.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's at mega scale, it does get a little bit complicated. And again, there's another area where I think nobody knows the full answer, but there is a near-term solution that we can make smart decisions right off the bat. So one of them, first of all, is like solid rockets are horrible. Right? Don't do solid rockets. So that's number one. Number two is kerosene. Kerosene is kerosene runs fuel rich. It's a very sooty byproduct. That's why, the flames of kerosene rockets are very, very bright, blinding your eye because of all the black body radiation that comes off of soot. And so it's a very sooty endeavor going all the way up through every level of our atmosphere. And so what you want to do is pick a solution that's not going to do that. And I think you're starting to see this trend in rocketry, which is cool, right? So again, go back to 2011, we're trading BE4. What propellant do we use? Nobody was using methane back then. Unbeknownst to us, SpaceX was also thinking about methane, and both came to the same conclusion. I think I don't know what the reasons they were, but they chose it, but it's a very reasonable thing. And the other thing is it burns really, really, really clean, right? Mm-hmm. Really clean. Mm-hmm. So there's really no soot production through that, and that's about a factor of 1,000 times better, environmentally than a kerosene engine. So that's something obvious that you can do. And then hydrogen is another one, right? Where hydrogen is amazing. Just the only byproduct is water and maybe a little extra hydrogen as well, right?
Yeah. If you let's say, like, you achieve your full vision and you're like launching and operating at scale. In that world, is methane, like, are the methane emissions from your rockets more in the aggregate than cow farts? Again, this was also an unplanned question.
I have
haven't run the numbers on that. You can you guys can tabulate that and get back to it. I just no rush on that. But no, I think that makes sense. That walkthrough is helpful. We'd be remiss to not, have some forward-looking aspect here. Like, tell us about timelines, tell us about the hop, and just the roadmap.
Yeah. So again, it all starts with the next and I think last big domino to fall in the industry is the reusable upper stage. Again, go back, it's tightly coupled system. You got to figure out what your reusable second stage looks like before you can really design the rest. And so that's where we started. Build our second stage engine, which is unique in its own right. And the next step then is to integrate into a demonstrator vehicle. So just think the way that Starship began, right? A pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
By comparison, there's really nothing simple about it, but by comparison, pretty, let's call it a minimum viable product, actually. Minimum viable product flight design that incorporates avionics and software and GNC, flight control and all of those things. We want to get that up and flying as fast as possible. And then, build the rest of the rocket as well.
Does that technology go into the production rocket or maybe some of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. So avionics and GNC and flight software, those are all things that we're working on today. And actually we run our test stands not only in Moses Lake, but also in Kent. We run those on flight computers and flight code blocks. And those are deployed company wide, which is really, really cool. I think that's a unique approach as well. But, same way you want to beat up your hardware until it doesn't care anymore. You want to beat up your flight code until it doesn't care anymore. And that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. And the hop, aren't y'all planning to try it? That's targeted for this year?
Well, we're looking at
next year.
the early part of next year. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah. It's fast. What about employees? What can you share in terms of headcount now and then over the next half year to year?
Half year to year. Okay. So, well, first of all, we're 72 people today.
72 people doing all of this.
All of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty, well, yeah, on that point. So, okay, listen to this. This is, I went back and calculated, and it's crazy to me. But the day we closed, the average headcount from the day we closed the seed round to the day we fired our engine for the first time, the average headcount during that period of time is 27 and a half people. Building, manufacturing, designing engines from scratch, the vehicle, flight code, avionics, GNC.
Are you guys
building and designing a test stand? It's crazy.
Do y'all get like any sleep? Like what? There's something missing
that's
here.
Another
Something
thing,
doesn't
right?
add
So
up.
everybody's super, super, super hard worker, and really, really at the top of the game. I think that we are able to create a company. This is kind of my thesis also, is we can create a company that can move just as fast as any other, but also not beat up our people too much. And I think in general, it's a really fun place to work. We value and encourage, getting out on the weekend and enjoying the incredible Pacific Northwest, or wherever you want to go for that matter.
So much better than Southern California.
And so we try to strike a balance where, this is a place where you can move fast, but you can also do other things. And I mean, look, there's times where we're not sleeping.
Right.
Well, there's other times where we go and enjoy.
I don't know, before like a key demonstration test or something, I would imagine.
We've got our milestones that we march hard toward, right? That all lead up into something like that. And I guess the way I view it philosophically is, first of all, it's a marathon. For the company, it's a marathon. But it can be a relay race too, right? So while you have the baton, you're cranking, and then you can hand off the baton to the next person. Once you hit your milestone, then you can hand the baton off to the next person. We kind of think about that across the board.
Right. Well, that's good to hear, because burnout is definitely a perennial problem in this industry, I would say.
Yeah.
What about? I have to ask these questions. When do you think you would need to raise financing again? And also, do you have you do have an estimate for what you think the total cost of developing the first rocket and reaching orbit will be? I know you have it. I don't know if you're going to share it with me. That's the question.
On the raise, I'm not going to say anything too specific, but what I will say is need and want are two different things. And what I mean by that is what we try to do with the finances is we do a raise. We have a defined scope that we want to accomplish with that raise. And so we, approve or unleash those particular projects. And that has a certain amount of runway associated with it. As we proceed, our company naturally grows. And once we start to feel comfortable in our skin again, now we can start thinking about unlocking additional projects, additional programs to get ourselves the next way into, closer to space. And I'm not comfortable unlocking those, right? If you took the philosophy of, just do everything at once in this industry, guess what? You can turn your runway into 0 months real quick, right? So we don't unlock those additional programs until we do an additional raise. And that way we can keep a healthy, stable runway in front of us. And I can go to sleep at night knowing that the promise that I've made to our employees is real. The other thing that we do is try to be as transparent as possible with our finances, so everybody knows, kind of the boat we're in, what they're signing up for, and where we're at. So just try to be healthy in that way.
It's a very good point about need versus want. And I think most people will kind of know what that means. But how did you convince Hans to come on board as an advisor? He's an advisor, right?
Hans is an advisor. Yeah. We started talking to Hans and Hans Koningsman for
Yeah, that's
not on the first name basis, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not, for the record, I'm not on a first name basis with them. I said that like we're old friends.
Yeah, I think what did it for Hans was, first of all, the things that we said, he could tell that we were moving pretty quick. But I think the thing that really did it for him was that this is a different and unique approach that resonated with him, I think. I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of him at this point, but I know that he viewed it as a unique approach. It's different, and it's appealing, and he wanted to be a part of, seeing if we can make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be mindful of your time, and it's also Friday afternoon, and got to practice what you're preaching and get out and enjoy the great outdoors. Maybe not yet. I mean, it's 3:15 p.m. here, and it's Austin City Limits weekend too. I'm really hoping that the audio doesn't reflect this, but I can feel the stage vibrating right now. I'm a
awesome.
mile from, yeah. But anyways,
I can't hear anything for what it's worth.
Well, you got the over here.
That's
right. We didn't even really get to, I mean, we could talk for 2 more hours, but we didn't get to the wider sort of launch landscape. I can save it for part 2, table it, but I do want to ask, what is your answer? And you definitely get it. You've definitely thought about it. Like in a, what changes for Stoke in a post-Starship world? Is a post-Starship world something we should take for granted?
Well, those 2 different questions. I think that if you're in the
like,
industry,
the industry kind of takes it for granted, that it's going to happen.
I think it's
kind of a question of when rather than if.
I agree with you, right? And I think that if you're in the industry and you're thinking it's not going to happen, then you should probably go back to the drawing board and think about it, right? I mean, Starship is incredible, right? But I think that it's also not the end all be all for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive, massive vehicle, and any one vehicle can go one place at a time. And so here's the way I think about it. What you want to build in this industry or any industry is a place that can deliver you wherever you want to go, whenever you want to go, at low cost. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 things that a consumer cares about, right? And so if you are as big as Starship is, can you fill all the seats? Can you aggregate payloads in a timely fashion so that you have the availability to bring something where it needs to go when it needs to go there? My thesis is that maybe not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. There are things that will hugely benefit from Starship and are in fact impossible without Starship. And I think that the heavy industry and the things that Starship brings builds the space economy, and that will build demand. Once you have some things up there that do new and interesting things, more stuff is going to need to go to support those things and also to do other things as well. So I think Starship's incredible. I hope it's successful. I think it helps the entire industry if it is. But what it does mean is that you've got to be able to be competitive.
Except the launch industry.
Except the launch industry. I would say except for the old launch industry that operates under the old rules of thinking, right? So you have to be able, what it means is you have to be competitive with Starship on cost and beat them on availability.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I'm glad. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, and it ties into comments earlier about, wherever, whenever, rapid reuse, low cost, like it all, it all ties together. So I see. One more question before we go to the quack. It's been a long day. This is my second podcast. I meant to say quick. I said quack. Before we go to the fun stuff, what's the, is it premature to be thinking about like who your customer base is, and what you mentioned constellations, like is it primarily initially going to be like, constellation customers, you think, EO?
We have,
I don't know, like other missions.
Well, I think the only thing that we're not at this point in the ball game is manned flight.
Okay. Oh yeah, good. I'm glad you mentioned that. That was on my list.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point in the ballgame, if there's a commercial reason to do it, then, maybe that changes down the road. But that's if full reusability wasn't hard enough to crack right out of the gate, then just put humans on top. um, so here's what I would say. We have commercial traction with every vertical that we see emerging in the space economy.
Okay.
And that's really cool.
Okay, cool.
Other than manned flight.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. So you probably knew this is coming. If I don't know if you've heard of I ask this question every time. What's your hottest take on the future of the space industry?
My hottest take on the future of the space industry is that not only will it be big, but it has to be big. We need it as a civilization. We talked a lot about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to happen. It's a very, very critical moment in our history because I think the moment is fleeting. The window of investment and the window of us being able to spend as much time as we do as a civilization thinking and working about getting to space. That's a finite window in time. So we've got to nail it, and we've got to walk through that door right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's happening. We just
probably
need, let's say, as an industry, 10 more years, and we'll get that domino knocked over.
Yeah. Second, what would you? And we have kind of touched on this or adjacent to it. What would you be doing if you weren't in space?
I alluded to earlier, I think,
fusion,
for whatever reason, I'm attracted to these things that have really, really high energy densities, and I think, look, I think our sources of energy are something that we have to really think hard about, not only from an environmental and a sustainability perspective, but also from a security perspective. I think I get excited about distributed energy concepts, and so that would be the place I focus. And maybe I'm contrarian or not, I don't know, but I think the classic solar and wind and things like that, I don't think those are attractive, sustainable, scalable means for energy production.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're a little bit out of our purview here, but I would add to that it is very remarkable the extent to which geopolitics are still driven by the concentration, geographical blessing, I guess, of hydrocarbons. But I digress. Last question. I meant to ask it at the beginning, so I'm covering my ass here. Why Stoke? What's the name Stoke? And I also want to
the name. Then we talked about it for an hour and a half.
yeah. Sorry, we're running it back. No. I just want to say I don't know how often you get it. I will not and am not. This doesn't count. I'm not making any play on your. I'm sure people are like, oh, stoked to meet you, ha. But Stoke's a cool name.
The stoked to meet you, the pun is the thing I like least about it.
I figured in.
That's all right. So I think, first of all, it's really hard to name a company, and maybe that's number one. But we had a whiteboard going. We had a bunch of stuff, and it had to check a number of boxes that we had as criteria. And so bottom line is Stoke made it up there for whatever reason. It checked all of our pragmatic, practical boxes, like URL. It's simple. You don't have to sit and explain how to spell it, stuff like that. And it tied a lot of cool things together to me, right? So the first thing is it has a connotation with fire, and that's my background. So it's same with Tom's, right? So it speaks to stoking changes and revolutions, and that's what we want to be, a transformative company. It speaks to energy, right? What's your attitude going into work every day? We want everybody to be excited coming into work. We want them to love what they do. We want them to love the company that we're building. And then it also, kind of comes out of, a recreation and skiing, surfing type of a culture, which, speaks to balance. And I love to ski also. So it kind of, tied a number of different cool things together. There you go.
There you go. I'll take it. Well, Andy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Enjoy everything that you do here with the podcast, and keep it going.
Will do. That'll do it, everybody, for Pathfinder 0022. This was a great conversation, and it was a bit longer, but I think that everyone will enjoy it, and like all the different aspects of Stoke and beyond that we discussed. But I'm going to keep this outro short, and have a great rest of your week. I'm Ryan Duffy signing off, and I'll see you back here next Tuesday.